Here's a thought. Imagine, we have about 300 people in our church. Imagine if every person reached out to something like 2-3 people per day. It doesn't have to be big. It's just loving on somebody, buying somebody's coffee. How many think that's you could start out low. You can start out easy. Just ease your way in. If we did that as a church, I did the sums. I like sums. My dad's an accountant. Where's it gone? In 3 years, we could touch over 1 million people. I'm going to try this side. In 3 years... Oh, no, this side. In 3 years, we could touch 1 million people. Do you know what we're starting to see? I think Steph put up a testimony of where, I think it was Kaylin. She had a testimony. Kaylin had approached somebody out in South Bank, and they're like, I don't know if they were too amazed in the beginning, but they're like, oh, this guy kind of came and prayed. But the second time that Steph came through, or maybe you did have an amazing, I don't know if I'm telling the story wrong. I'll just go with my version of events. And anyway, so Steph is out there, and this guy was so impacted. So like a week ago, there was another guy that did the same thing, and now what's going on? You see, this is where it actually begins to become compounded. That as we live the naturally supernatural life, the normal Christian life as a company of people, I'm only talking about one church right here. We have influence more than just one church. I'm just talking about this church right here. If every person was living a naturally supernatural life, we could actually change the very perspective of a whole city. So many people have been burnt by religion. Oh, I know they went to church and we went to Catholic school, and I'm sure there's amazing Catholic schools. That seems to be one of the things that just keeps coming out. I don't like Christianity because I went to a Catholic school. I don't know. But the people, they've got their concept of Christianity. But when people begin to love them well, they begin to think differently. And when they go home and the next time somebody else loves them, then their heart's a bit more open. 2, 3, 4 touches, that's all it takes. We can change a city. We could change a city. We could change a nation. Let's start with Brisbane City. Let it be a prototype for the nations. I believe that God is actually looking for prototype nations. And in order to have a prototype nation, you've actually got to have a prototype city. And what God is wanting to do in this city, I believe, is going to be a prototype for the nations. Do you know that it's amazing that people all over the world are looking to what God is doing right here. It's very easy to become accustomed to what God is doing when you're in the midst of it. But there are many people. I was even talking up to Dave Ridley up in Darwin, and he says that what God is doing in Brisbane is absolutely outstanding. We need to get leaders from all around the country to come and meet and glean from this particular culture. He says, I've been talking to leaders up there, pastors of AOG churches, and the stuff that you guys are teaching that is actually shaking the very foundation of churches. But we want to honor, it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about big noting us. It's not about trying to put ourselves on a pedestal. This is for nations. Amen. And so for the fivefold ministry is actually for the equipping of the saints to do the work of the ministry. I have a dream. I believe that with our church culture, if we can begin to love well as a family. I wrote this down kind of with our core values, because love really is the focus. How many love love? Some people said that there's too much love in this, but I'm like, you can't have too much love. How's this for a mission statement? To love and be loved by the one who is love. To love as family to love as family as deeply as he loved. And to love the lost into loving family. You love it. It's just a thought. To love and be loved by the one who is love. When we actually begin to gaze into those eyes of love, we begin to be changed into that image from glory to glory. And we begin to love just like him. I was created to love just like my dad. And so, in the process and everything that we are doing as a church, and we're looking at developing some structure, but structure is never a replacement for the Holy Spirit. It's actually just to aid what God is beginning to do. But what we want more than structure is we want culture. Culture is far more important than structure. If we can have a culture that loves well, that adopts people, that we would love well as a family, that when people come, and we've seen this in the past, that the lost would say that they would just be in tears, and they would say, I just see how you love each other so well. I want to be a part of this family, and now I know that there is a God. Nations are within grasp. I believe that if we combine this, I want to say, if I could make a challenge to you in 2014, it would be this one. It would be these two things. But if you can't remember the two things, just remember the one. Can you take on one person in 1 year? One person in 1 year. How many think that that's attainable? Love them well. Adopt them into loving family. Do you know, I love, how many listen to Craig Marsh's sermon? Craig Marsh, was it like 3-4 people? Wow, you gotta listen to that sermon. That was incredible. Little tiny town in the middle of nowhere. They've got a prophetic word. I think there was a church of 20. And they made preparations for tens of thousands of people to come in. Like they increased the car park. They had overflow rooms. This is a church of 20. They thought, you're crazy. He said, no, we received a prophetic word. They had, how many packs did they have? Like visitors packs? 10,000, 20,000, something like that. They ran out of visitors packs when the revival hit. Actually, really feel, I heard God just speak to me then when Nathaniel was speaking, to make space, to actually intentionally make space, see it, see that person. You know, it's interesting because when we're moving into this new house, we have rooms there that are ready for people that we don't even know yet. We have rooms there. At least 3 or 4 rooms there that we can actually begin to read. People that we don't know yet, but we are expecting that because we've actually made the room, that there's harvest that is going to become, and they're going to come into loving family. They're not going to be just adopted as orphans. They're going to be loved in as loving family, and they are going to be the harvesters. You see, we're not just fishing for fish. We are fishing for fishermen. They're going to be the ones. If we can just get it right for one generation. Imagine this. If those of you, if we could get 200 people that would make the commitment, I can take on one person in a year and train them up. Not just take them on, but train them up to do the same thing. Do you know what we could see? Do you know what we could see? If we had 200 in 2014, I tell you what, I believe by the end of the year that we should at least have 200 people that are not only saved, but they're adopted in as loving family. At least 200. Are you with me? If we could do that by the next year, we had 400, then 800, then 1,600, then 3,200, then 3,200, 3,200, then 6,400. I'm used to do it the other way. By 13 years, we could reach 1 million people. 7 years later, we could reach 1 billion people. 1 billion, 2 billion, 4 billion, 8 billion. By that stage, maybe there's more than 8 billion people in the world, but don't worry, just give it another year. Impossible? The Acts Day Church was accelerating so quickly until Constantine came, that by 450 AD, the whole 100% of the known world would have been Christian. What happened? There was a lie that was actually sown that the only ones that are reproducing are the ones that are doing the ministry. You know, in China, they have something called the one-child policy. Think about this for a second. If the Chinese government is trying to control the population by saying you can only have one per couple, I think that the mentality in the church that Satan has been able to sell to cull the population of Christians invading the earth is something like this. Not instituting a one-child policy, but instituting only people that are government members can have children. The rest of the population, you can't have anybody. You can't reproduce. You're not called to reproduce. Only people in government are. I think that that's the concept that has actually gotten into the church. It's not just the fivefold ministry that are meant to be reproducing. It's actually a whole entire body of people that begin to embrace it with all of their heart and say, this is my part. If I can begin to steward one, I'm part of a bigger picture. And it is only a matter of time, because the kingdom is actually like leaven. It spreads throughout the whole entire dough. It is like the mustard seed that is the smallest of the seeds, but it grows to become the greatest of one of the greatest of the trees. That is the nature of the kingdom, that it is expanding, that it is reproducing. I believe that we can hit a tipping point with the next generation, that it is possible that in our time that we can see it. If we can just grasp a hold of it. If I could give you something right now with all of my heart, that you would catch this. If I had one message to preach, to stand before you before my time, is that if you could capture this one thing. So many things can get in the way. The one thing, if you could adopt somebody and sow into them well, so that they would begin to reproduce. Leaders who reproduce leaders. Disciplers who would reproduce disciplers. I feel like I'm harping on about this. I'm going to talk about this to my dying moment, because I know this is how nations will be transformed. I will not be content to stand back and watch another generation die without the knowledge of Jesus Christ.